Now that we have covered all the OAuth 2 user-initiated flows, let's dive into the machine-to-machine flows. Here we only have the client credentials flow. In these scenarios, there is no resource owner, so our OAuth 2 roles are reduced to just 3: the client, the authorization server, and the resource server. The client must be a confidential client, as it represents a server-side application running on the developer's network. In this flow, we will use the token endpoint to request tokens, but we will not use the authorization endpoint as it's only relevant for user-initiated flows. In this flow, the client initiates the process by sending POST request with its credentials to retrieve an access token. Here is how the curl command looks. The client sends a POST request to the token endpoint. Content type is set to URL encoded form data. The grant type is set to client credentials, indicating the use of this flow. Client credentials such as client ID and the client secret are provided for authentication. Optionally, scopes can be included for fine-grained access. The authorization server verifies the client's credentials, and if everything checks out, it sends back an access token. The client uses this access token to access resources on the resource server, not on behalf of a user but on behalf of itself. This is an important distinction and brings us to the possible use cases for this flow. The resource server validates the access token and, if valid, provides the requested resources to the client, completing the flow. Before exploring the use cases for this flow, it's important to remember that it's designed for actions carried out independently of any user context. It's not designed for actions involving user representation or device-specific authentication. Those situations will be addressed in later flows. Now let's explore where this flow is most applicable, starting with external service integration. In some scenarios, you may need your application to integrate with external or third-party services. This might include partners accessing your APIs to exchange data or add functionalities, or your application fetching external data like weather updates to display in a user dashboard. Moving on, another common scenario for this flow is internal server-to-server communication. Sometimes internal services need to communicate directly to support backend operations and data sharing within the organization. For instance, a backend service might use an internal API to update exchange rates, or a reporting tool might pull data from multiple internal services to generate insights. Another use case is automated system tasks, which includes scheduled jobs and maintenance scripts that run independently of user actions. These could be scheduled jobs like cron jobs for data syncing or backups, scripts that handle data migration or cleanup, or monitoring tools that check service health and performance via API access. Keep in mind that just because a user isn't initiating the flow doesn't automatically make this flow the right choice. The critical factor is that the action should not require user delegation or context. It must be purely service-based, with the client acting independently of any user. If backend services need to perform actions on behalf of a user or with a user context, we'll cover specific flows for that in later lessons. Now let's quickly recap everything by walking through a decision tree that helps determine if the client credentials flow is the right choice for your use case. We start with the first essential question. Does the current action need user involvement? If the answer is yes, meaning the action requires direct user interaction or consent, then user-initiated flows are the right choice, and we stop here. If the answer is no, we move on to the next question. Is the client a device with limited input capabilities? This is where the device code flow comes in, which is particularly useful for devices like IoT gadgets or smart TVs that need user authorization but have limited input options. We'll cover the device code flow in detail in a later lesson. If the answer is no, we continue to the next question. Does the client need to perform this action on behalf of a specific user, requiring user delegation? If so, we use the token exchange flow, as it allows a machine to perform actions within a user's context. We'll dive deeper into the token exchange flow in a later lesson as well. Finally, if none of these conditions apply, meaning the action is performed purely on behalf of the client without any user context, then the client credentials flow is the right choice.